Okay, welcome back to the studio, and we can now get in amongst it. With a few of the coaches out of the way. I think coaching discussions out of the way.
Well, we really didn't get into the coaching, did we?
You want one more go?
One more go. A denial.
Whoa.
Malcolm? Well,
Yes
what
or no?
Well, yes to whatever you asked first and no to the second one.
Pardon?
So you've been approached.
Well, yeah, I've certainly spoken about football to a lot of people this year.
Has a club offered you the coaching position?
Well, I've certainly spoken at a very
To
loose
Geelong?
term.
Yes or no?
No, to Lenny, the left cleaner. He's pretty interested in getting a job.
I think that's
Well,
pretty well.
You've been approached.
Yeah.
That means you know.
That's fair Thanks, Drew. That's good, too.
Well done.
Yeah.
You want us to move on?
Yeah, I think it's a good
The
idea.
next item on the script is to discuss forwards. And it's Malcolm and Bernie. Do you want to sort of keep the heat on yourself?
Yeah, well, fine. The forwards, was a terrible day for forwards yesterday, and I think that the first quarter was probably where Carlton lost it when you look back in the context of the game, and really to kick 2 goals 5, and both of them very late. They had about 20 minutes of the ball and just couldn't score goals. On the other hand, in the second quarter, Hawthorn, with this man on screen now, John Kennedy, being very exciting in that first and third quarters, and of course Brereton, I thought, played very well for most of the day, and Jason Dunstall, my word, he only kicked 1 goal, but he just put so much pressure on the Carlton defence every time he goes for the ball. And I thought that the Hawthorn forward line, there were probably 3 that won their positions, and it was very difficult to find a winner for Carlton, Bernie.
Yes, I thought Kernahan, although he didn't have a lot of possessions, tried very hard. He did the hard things. He did a lot of rucking on the forward line and a lot of knock-ons in the conditions. Silvani could have kicked and should have kicked this goal at the start of the third quarter, which would have given Carlton a tremendous start. And he also kicked another goal in that third quarter, but Hawthorn immediately switched Langford back to cover Silvani, and that effectively put him out of the game. Mew went to centre-half back, and then he did very well too, so Kernahan went out of the game as well. But I thought the player that really made the difference in that second quarter, as you said, was Kennedy, where in about 10 minutes he kicked an amazing left-foot goal and set up a couple of others for Hawthorn.
Yeah, actually, they were, I mean, it was a difficult day. For only 15 goals scored showed how hard the forwards had to work. And I said to Ian Robertson on the boundary line, I said 12 goals could see this game out. I wasn't far wrong. 15, it was pretty difficult conditions for forwards.
Well, Mel, do you think that the defensive skills of the Carlton forward line were a problem for them and may have cost them the edge?
I think you're right. I can remember 3 or 4 blues made by Carlton players which Hawthorn got goals from.
Well, I suppose a game like that was going to be determined around the bottoms of packs, and well, you could throw a ground sheet over 20 players most of the day. Rucks, Rovers and Ruck Rovers. So you've got the lot, Don Scott.
Yes, well, I think 2 significant things came out of this game. One, the umpire threw the ball up. We mentioned that earlier, and I think that had an advantage as far as Carlton were concerned. Also, the way Carlton set up their forward line, they had their 2 big fellows at the 50-metre on the 50-metre line, which left their attacking side or their offensive side completely open, which allowed them to run through there, because usually fellows do run off the square and put a lot of pressure on the guys right in the centre of the ground. Carlton are very offensive the way they set up in the centre, and lo and behold, if ever a team starts to get hit-outs in the centre, because they're not set up that way. But I can't understand why Hawthorn didn't man them up better, because they started with 2 guys on the defensive side and then run through. And they were never played man-to-man. Tuck had the job on Bradley. Schwab started with Johnson, but he went off, and Evans came on and wasn't a real contributor, Bernie, yesterday. Bradley was mainly, well, we think in the centre, I think in the centre, but on the ball with Tuck. But after half-time, Whitman came onto the ball and gave Buckenara a bit of a rest, either where Buckenara was ruck roving, but got injured, then had to go back. Herman was playing on Buckenara early, and he was just he was loose, inexperienced, and again, one of these players that doesn't start off man-to-man and put a pressure on the opposition. Narley had Platten, interesting battle, they played wide of one another. I think the only mistake they really, Platten did make in an actual contest was where Gnarly got his first goal. Carlton is very predictable, and when they go forward at centre bound or boundary throw-ins, they bring the ball over the back. But Gnarly on that particular occasion got in front and the ball came down.
Aren't you surprised that Hawthorn aren't as good at covering that Johnson and Madden combination? Well, Johnson was out yesterday, but that combination?
Yeah, interesting, Ron, because a lot of those... they're exactly right. And Madden 12 hit-outs from the centre, and they took the ball out of the centre 9 times, whereas Hawthorn took the ball, well, Deere actually got 3 times he got his hands on the ball, but Hawthorn took it out 5, so there is a discrepancy.
Don, you've been a bit of a Carlton man for probably the latter half of the season. How can you see them getting back, if they can win next week, how can you see them getting back and getting on top of Hawthorn.
Yeah, it's a big problem, Ian, and I think their ranks are depleted. Everything's going Hawthorn's way as far as injury, and Carlton, I think they're starting to run out of numbers now.
Scotty, a quick one. If there was a weakness in Hawthorn's lineup, would you suggest that maybe support for Platten?
Exactly right, Kelvin, because he didn't change. He stayed on the ball most of the day, and they left their smaller fellows around the half-forward line or back line. Didn't change. Either with Buckenara, he had to do a lot of work, as did Deer.
So in
Thanks, John, and nice outfit.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Well, it was just for Scotty because the
Be
rock...
quiet. That's right. We'll talk defences and centre lines after this. Davis, be quick.
Be quick. OK, well, I thought that Carlton won on the wings because Dipper was taken up by Blackwell, number 8, and I thought particularly early he was given a bit of a carving up. In fact, was taken off, replaced by Morrissey. And then I thought that perhaps on the other wing that young Hannah did a pretty good job, although not a dominating job, on Hall, who's been a very good player for Hawthorn this year and fitted into the side from South Australia very, very well. In the centre, well, of course, Jono went out early, didn't he, Bob?
He did, and Bradley went in, I thought. I've got 12 fellas down here across the centre line. DPA, Domenico, Whitman, Tuck, Morrissey, Tony Hall, Wayne Johnson, Blackwell, Hannah, Bradley. I've got them out.
Well, I think Tuck's worth talking about because, you know, this guy's played on the wing this year. At 35, playing on the wing, and playing on one of the fastest players in the game, Bradley, on the centre, when that switch occurred through Jono going off, and doing so well is just an extraordinary effort. I mean, he is an absolute marvel, Michael.
This do-si-do of Malcolm's where they move through the centre all the time. What do you think about that? Is that a new trend?
It's an Adelaide tactic.
Oh, is it?
But really, that's nothing new. I mean,
No, of course
it's
not.
been done about 15 years. That Johnson goes into the centre to get the ball out.
Yeah.
Bradley on the half-forward flank. Then it's change over as play goes on.
You just use your strength players or the forceful players to take
get
it
the
out.
ball out of the centre.
For the bounce, Bob.
Yes, only for the bear. I understand that. When Malcolm comes down, he'll explain all that.
So who would have won across the centre, do you think?
I think it was approximately equal, seeing that Tuck had the upper hand in the centre. But on the wings, I think that Carlton won.
Well, if
wasn't
Buckenara
a
was in the centre, Buckenara was one of the best players on the ground,
Yes,
so
he
he
was.
gives an edge.
Yes.
Right, let's talk defences. Kelvin Moore, one of the great fullbacks, and Robertson. Did you ever play in defence?
Once I pulled Peter Hudson by the Guernsey. It's about my greatest.
And out, right, Kel.
Well, it was a day of mixed fortunes, really, for both defences, but I think Hawthorn's greater resilience, really, when the game was in the balance, really gave him the edge, and it was probably something that was the entire side. But early in the game, I thought that Aiken was in a bit of trouble up in the Carlton's defence, as was McGuinness, who we see there. Dorotich was troubling him. But I think really Carlton's steadier defenders were probably the two lesser knowns in Kennedy and Dunlop. But I think the change also that was significant was Langford and Mew back to their more accustomed positions at full-back and centre-half-back, where they were very important players when the game was in the balance.
It was interesting to hear Robert Wall say that he wasn't all that concerned about the defence, and in conditions that were probably set up for defenders, Hawthorn did only kick 9 goals, so a couple of their players you mentioned may have been a little loose, but as a unit, he thought that maybe it was the forwards that let the ball come into the defence too easily, which certainly unsettles those guys.
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, that's a valid point. The conditions weren't really leaning to forward play, but I think that Hawthorn were just steadier in the crisis that really